ยินดีต้อนรับอุบลราชธานีมหาวิทยาลัยและซีรีส์ที่2เกี่ยวกับการรับรู้ทั่วโลกจากออฟฟิศระหว่างประเทศในที่2เราจะดูแบบจากสังคมวิทยาแบบและแห่งความคิดคนจากยุโรปมีชื่อเสียงเอมิล เดอร์ไคม์และปีเตอร์ เบเกอร์นี่แปลกนะครับทุกยุโรปมีแบบนี้สำหรับศาสนาทำไมและในทุกเอเชียเรามีแบบอื่นแบบพระพุทธเจ้าและรูปปั้นมากจากพระพุทธเจ้าทำไมเราอยากรู้จักมากกว่านักสังคมวิทยาศาสตร์จากยุโรปอาจจะอธิบายทุกอย่างมากกว่าในอนาคตเราหวังว่าอธิบายทุกอย่างที่ภาษาไทยและเดี๋ยวนี้หลังจากที่2จาก12วิดีโอเกี่ยวกับศาสนาโลกในภาษาอังกฤษโชคดีเข้าใจทุกอย่างและเวลาคุณอยากทำให้ชัดๆนะครับ YouTube เป็นไปได้setting นะครับชัดๆและอาจจะคุณเข้าใจผมและสำหรับเรียนภาษาอังกฤษแบบดีมากๆนะครับโชคดี We're going to investigate the idea that our reality is socially constructed. We can study worldviews, religions, from the inside, from the perspective of the believer, or functionally. How does religion function in society? And in this case, we're looking at the sociological factors that make religion a stabilizing force in society. And of course, one of the key proponents of this idea is Emile Durkheim. And so it was his idea as one of the principal founders of the field of sociology that sociology would be a scientific study of people. He was deeply concerned with the breakdown of traditional social structures that had existed throughout most of European history, but now were collapsing in the industrial era and the alienation of workers from their products. So sociology itself might prove to be a way to prevent the collapse of societies and civilizations. And there's his famous quote, "The idea of a society is the soul of religion." And we can see the sociological factors of English Christianity in the form of British Anglicanism and compare that to Russian versions of the same religion but different society and therefore a different form of the religion of Christianity, and likewise the difference between Buddhism in Japan and Buddhism in Thailand or Tibet, though called the same religions in fact, widely differ across Asia due to the social features. So for Durkheim, we're all born into this world. We listen to music we did not write, read novels, and use language we did not invent. We've inherited everything we are, in large part, from our society, and certainly social norms and our functions in society are part of what religions delineate for human beings, their place in the social world. And so following Durkheim, Peter Berger is particularly well known for his explicit idea of the social construction of reality. Reality is not just given, but we filter everything we know through our language and our culture, and that includes the religion, the music, and the philosophy, the literature, everything about our society makes up us, and therefore we are socially constructed beings. So we can see in this well-known picture of the pilgrimage to Hajj in Mecca that religion serves as a glue for people. It is in part how humans recognize each other as being from their own in-group or another out-group. On the good side, religion can help us share experiences and to tap into deep roots in our culture and share these intimately with other members of our group. On the negative side, religions can serve as fascistic forces where people from one religion famously hate people from another one. Often, those who are closest on the spectrum to their own belief are the ones they mistrust the most. So for Berger, we need to have answers to these questions. Who am I? What am I? Who are my people? What are we supposed to believe and how are we supposed to behave? We can just look at these figures right here, Napoleon, Lincoln, Khomeini, or Chairman Mao, as pan-societal cultural images that have great meaning for the French, the Americans, the Chinese, or the Iranians. So these individuals help to cement and glue people together with their often omnipresent imagery everywhere throughout society. So it's tempting to believe that we're just born in the world and we pick things up sort of objectively or naturally. Even such concrete items such as our gender, our family structures, and of course our religions are in fact not things we put together at all, but were constructed for us by prior millennia of human social evolution. And we merely are the inheritors of that ancient history. We can see, for example, clearly in some cultures there are up to 4 genders. Others acknowledge only 2 genders. Some families are polygamistic. A few are polyandrous, having many husbands. The nuclear family, that's an invention of just the 20th century, yet many Americans take that for granted as a standard, when in fact, the long history of human families has always involved the grandmothers, the aunts, the uncles, and cousins in the village. And so Peter Berger speaks of a threefold process. Externalization is where a great social hero like Jesus, the Buddha, or Muhammad, they externalize something from within. Granted, they too are socially constructed human beings. So what they're externalizing is based on what they had internalized in their life growing up already. When they externalize their prophecies, in the case of Muhammad, or the awakening of the Buddha, then they are effectively creating new worlds. They're seeing the old material from past millennia in a new light that others find relevant for themselves. So as Muhammad or the Buddha express their inner awareness of the sacred, others write this down in books, the Quran or the Dhammapada, for example. And thus these externalized internal awarenesses become objectivated in Berger's view. They become part of objective reality. And hence we have Bibles and Qurans and Tripitaka and the like. And then when these objectivated social structures are there, then they take on a life of their own, and others can come to internalize those objectivated structures from the long ago teacher and make them their own, whether that is in a Sunday school classroom or a young Thai fellow becoming a monk for some period of time. And of course, internalizing the objectivated reality that was externalized by the superhero long ago means that then the believer can express all that in a new way yet and externalize perhaps the views of a new sect of that religion. And these ideas aren't limited to what we just normally call religion, which I prefer the larger term worldviews. So we can see that Vladimir Lenin externalized a new vision, if you will, of Karl Marx. We can see that Einstein externalized a new awareness of physics, and others take on the objectivated meaning as they learn about them in schools. Likewise, Confucius teaches his disciples, and eventually his internal awareness becomes the social structure for more than 1 billion people today. And indeed, the objectivation of ideas as well is not limited to what we call religion. As we can see, the internal awareness of scientists like Einstein, or scientists like Goddard inventing rockets, evolve into objective structures like real rockets, or the real Quran of Muhammad, or the little red book of Chairman Mao, and these are internalized by millions of others. And indeed, we internalize these things primarily through schools in our youth. We internalize science through our chemistry classes. One may internalize Kung Fu if one has been raised in that tradition, or Indian dancing, or the Mormon practice of 2 years of missions work. All of that has been set up for people in the past and now is internalized in the present. And of course, without these social structures, we can see societies descend into chaos. Many cultures are grappling with the new future world of science. We can see reactions to new social developments such as gay marriage, or even the accepted practice of being gay or lesbian in modern societies. New visions of gender roles conflict with traditional ones from a variety of cultures. Similarly, ideas about abortion and when life begins can cause great conflict and tumult among people of differing opinions as evolution progresses. And we do see breakdowns of entire societies. For example, we can think of the French Revolution in particular, which shook the foundations of traditional French Catholic society. And Napoleon brings in a revolution, often bloody and violent, and yet it leads to a new social structural system for the French people, and thus they evolve. And so to successfully become socialized in a society, there has to be some agreement between what I as an individual perceive about the world and what my society is telling me it should be. For example, I can look at the Constitution and see that it's referencing we the people, and yet if I look around my society, I may see gross inequality and privileged people compared to my own self, and my lack of privilege compared to some others, and my excessive privilege compared to others in my society. And when the inequality grows too great, then society can break down as people realize that what they've been raised to think isn't jiving with their lived experience. And so Peter Berger referenced this idea of the sacred canopy. The sacred canopy, of course, extends around a group of people. For example, at a Jewish wedding, the couple is under the sacred canopy. And that is what a worldview does for us. Call it a religion, call it a worldview. Our sacred canopy can be science, it could be Christianity, Islam, Buddhism. But our societies, as a rule, generally have these sacred canopies that in the past the vast majority of people agreed with the opinions expressed in their sacred canopy. And without a sacred canopy and some kind of grip socially, we find the existential void. Humans have to answer these kind of questions about how they fit into the society in which they live or go mad. So Berger talks about legitimations. Legitimations are those things that are legitimated by society. We can think there was a time in the United States where segregation existed, and it was legitimated by society to have separate drinking fountains for blacks and for whites, separate schools for blacks, and for whites this was legitimated even to the ghastly practice of slavery, which was once legitimated, some even using the Bible itself to legitimate slavery. And so here in our image, you can also see authority figures legitimating reality, expressing the facts that you need to accept as part of the sacred canopy of that leader, whether it's the Pope of Rome or Kim Jong-un of Korea. So from those first level authority figures, people such as dictators or absolutist religious heads, then second level legitimation takes place as the myths of society spread throughout and form the basis for the thinking of the youngsters up to the old people. And we think of myths like George Washington chopping down the cherry tree, telling his father, "I cannot tell a lie." And of course, this is a myth. This never happened. Nor did Lincoln walk miles to return a penny to a woman who'd left her change at his store. But they serve to reinforce the values of honesty. Indeed, Thanksgiving is something where the myth is that natives and pilgrims lived together in peace. Well, that just didn't happen in reality, but it's part of our cultural myth to celebrate this dinner where differently minded people could come together and share a common meal. And so then we have third level legitimations, where specialized bodies of knowledge and philosophical repositories, works of literature that are used to also legitimate different societies' social structures. And so it's not just the French Revolution we mentioned, but the Rwandan genocide, where societal structures broke down completely. Every Rwandan murdering his or her neighbor, a complete social collapse, as happened in Cambodia also, and as happens regularly throughout human history. So as long as you're accepting the world that's been made for you, maybe you were raised in a particular conservative or liberal sect and you're quite happy with it, then there's really nothing to worry about for you. But if you start to doubt it, if you start to question it, then your world may become uncertain and shaky, and you may lose sight of your own social identity in the process of that. And this has happened to many people. And so the nomos is a Greek term for law. In this case, the law of society. We can think the West is all about democratic institutions that have existed since the Magna Carta in England and slowly evolved in strength and presence to characterize what we call Western civilization as democratic. And that was a shield against chaos, holding on to the Constitution and the Gettysburg Address and these different documents and ideas that shape American consciousness. And likewise, the Communist Party did that for the Soviet Union and still does today in China, serve as a shield against social chaos. But then there appear times in history where great things happen, and people do question the past society, and they seek new answers. These great upheavals constitute the great epochs in human social evolution. So when the Buddha awakens and he realizes that the caste system is a fraud, as is the subjugation of women as mere appendages to men, or when Martin Luther King realizes that the past legitimation of the second-class citizenship of his people was wrong, then he opposed the legitimated canopy of society that had existed, and he presents a new vision of the role of African Americans in modern American society. Likewise, Martin Luther busted open the medieval Catholic Sacred Canopy of Europe, and of course brought about a European Civil War, is really what we can call it, that lasted 500 years and resulted in the deaths of millions and millions of people, as did the revolutions in France and China. So when society is threatened like that and new figures emerge to create new social worlds, we can say those who are stuck in the old system are alienated from their ability to see new things and create their own new worlds. So when one leaves a cult, for example, and is deprogrammed, when you're in the cult, you're alienated from the rest of society. But when you get out of the cult, you are de-alienated, and then you can join with the larger society. So alienation is prevalent, especially these days in modern society, because we no longer have these fixed social worlds in which we can live and have our happy lives without questioning everything. So indeed, our world is socially constructed, like it or not. But once we are aware of this, we can externalize our own new vision for society and break out of the alienating presence of old tribal traditions, if you will, and create new worlds, and thus become de-alienated. So good luck deconstructing your own socially constructed reality, and all the best in recreating your own new world.